This is the Fear and Greed Saturday edition, a look at some of the most memorable stories of the week. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our Saturday show is all about the two of us, each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. Then we'll see if we can land on anything resembling a consensus. Usually we can't.
The last couple of weeks, though, I think we've sort of gone a bit consensual in the sense that we've agreed too much.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm confident then, heading into this week, that my stories will top all of yours.
All those winter sports are starting again, and this is one of them. It's a competition. This is first grade.
All right.
Come on, let's go. I want to know what your biggest story is.
Well, I think the biggest story really is pretty much undeniable. It's the biggest story this week. It was the biggest story last week. It is the crisis in Ukraine. And I'll try and keep this brief, Sean, because it's a situation that just keeps evolving. But when you look at the progression across the last week, the week started with Russia facing some pretty strong resistance within Ukraine. And so that led to an escalation of the conflict, more Russian troops pouring into the country. You saw those long lines of tanks and armoured vehicles, more missile strikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin put his country's nuclear forces on high alert early in the week, which was a major step, and obviously a lot of international condemnation for that move. The death toll of the conflict is rising. Ukrainian cities are starting to fall. 2 rounds of peace talks have failed this week. Vladimir Putin has declared, though, that the invasion is on track and he's going to fight till the end. International condemnation, Sean, as I mentioned, has been loud, and it's been getting even more loud through the week. More countries, including Australia, are now providing lethal aid to Ukraine. Russia is starting to find itself increasingly isolated, but still Putin isn't backing down. Add in the massive impact on financial markets, some commodity prices hitting record highs. It's really hard to go past this as the biggest story of the week.
I think you're probably right, except I would actually take a subset of what you've just said, and you mentioned it at the end, commodity prices hitting a record high. I think this week, that's actually the real change. If there's a humanitarian crisis, more than 1 million people have left Ukraine. It is incredibly sad to watch and hear about. The thing that has really changed this week is that incredible turmoil in global financial markets. I mean, crude oil prices just keep getting higher. They've been above $110 a barrel all week. Russia is the 4th largest producer of oil, but multinationals have pretty much stopped buying output from Russian producers, even though they're offering discounts. LNG prices are at 6-month highs. Now, gas is still flowing between Russia and the continent, but if that's disrupted, wow, those prices will fly. Coal prices are also soaring. Energy security is everything at the moment. Thermal coal prices hit an all-time high this week, and they've tripled in value over the past 2 months. Soft commodity prices are rising. Wheat, of course, is the big one. The world's wheat belt is Russia and Ukraine. We're going to see much higher food costs as a result. Even the Aussie dollar, on the back of those higher commodity prices, has been appreciating. It finished the week around 73.5 cents. Now, I don't really want to argue the toss about which is the bigger story in this instance because it is a tragedy all round. I think the real change this week, though, has been what's happened in commodity prices.
Yeah, look, I think it's all really part of the one big story, and it is
half a point each.
Half a point each, and it's a story that we'll be discussing for some time to come, I suspect, as new elements emerge over the next few weeks. Let's move on, Sean, to the most remarkable story. Do you want to kick this one off?
I will. What happened at Crown Resorts and Austrac this week?
Oh,
that is remarkable.
Oh, yes. This is a great story.
So Austrac filed an 863-page statement of claim in the federal court. It alleges 500 breaches of anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing provisions, innumerable, which must mean thousands and thousands, innumerable other breaches, and claims that could amount to almost $1 billion in penalties. Austrac claims that Crown did everything from accepting cash in shoeboxes and plastic bags to maintaining relationships with customers suspected of being involved in sex slavery, narcotics dealing, all sorts of things. And Crown's management, Austrac claims, failed to stop it from happening. Now, these charges are yet to be proven. It's really important to remember that. Many of them emerged from the Bergen Inquiry in New South Wales and the Royal Commissions in Victoria and Western Australia. Some of the more extraordinary, remarkable is probably the word, isn't it? Remarkable claims this week. There's a claim that one customer who was known to be a money launderer was still doing business with Crown after the Victorian Royal Commission found the casino giant unfit to run a casino. Just the concept of actually having a money launderer still operating at that stage. Incredible. As I said, it's just a claim. Another one, Austrac alleges Crown failed to assess 60 high-risk VIPs who bet in excess of $70 billion between March 2016 and the end of last year. $70 billion. I'm just trying to work that out. That's 1.1, 5 years. That's more than $200 million on average each a year.
That's amazing.
Wow, incredible. Crown hasn't yet commented directly on the allegations, but the company has continually said it's overhauled its anti-money laundering systems. Remarkable allegations. I just wonder whether the suitor, equity group Blackstone, might get cold feet on this one.
Sean, so much of that sounds like you've just made it up. It sounds like it's from, I don't know, like a John Grisham kind of novel or something. But it's just so much in that, particularly the allegation that Crown continued to do business with someone who was believed to be a money laundering risk after the Royal Commission.
Hard to imagine.
Amazing. Look, the most remarkable story for me, Sean, this week was the scale of the flooding throughout Queensland and New South Wales. Just so much rain, so much water, and tragically the death toll went into the double figures across the two states. This week the focus was really on Brisbane, where we saw scenes reminiscent of the 2011 floods, and also in the northern New South Wales towns of Lismore and Ballina. Probably the best demonstration for me of just how significant this flood was came from Lismore. That is really a town that's known for flooding. It does happen every few years, really. One of the biggest, well, really the previous biggest flood in recorded history was in 1974. The Wilsons River, it was just a touch over 12 metres was where it peaked at. This week it peaked more than 2 metres higher than that. 2 metres higher than the previous record. It is just mind-blowing. The rain keeps falling through parts of the East Coast, and towards the end of the week, the focus then really shifted to Sydney. Look, insurers are bracing for claims. I'm sure they're already coming in. The federal government has announced a $375 million relief package, but this disaster is going to cost billions. It is the most remarkable story for me this week because I know Lismore well, I know Ballina well. I've never seen anything like that before, and I think you just have to look at those pictures, hear those stories, and just say, this is remarkable.
It's been a very sad week, hasn't it, between floods in Ukraine?
It really has. And you've made this comment before about the fact that the week has really just been dominated by these two big stories, one international and one domestic. And really, apart from that, there hasn't been much of anything else.
Okay, 1.5 to a half. You win that one. I'm conceding.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. Okay, Sean, we're looking for the sleeper story, the story that may not be getting the attention that it deserves or will become a bigger issue in the future. What was it for you this week?
For me, it's the role business is playing in the war in Ukraine. Now, it just shows what a global economy we operate in, that so many big businesses can actually pull products from or stop buying from Russia to impact what's going on. So the energy giants are the obvious ones, BP, Shell, ExxonMobil, but Nike and Apple, they've stopped selling products in Russia. Now, the Russian people will hurt as a result of that, but that will put pressure on the administration, the Putin administration, to do something about the war in Ukraine. Locally, Atlassian have stopped servicing Russia, Treasury Wine stopped selling into Russia, the Future Fund's pulled its investments out. Endeavour Group, which includes Dan Murphy's and BWS, they're not stocking Russian vodka. I think it's just really interesting and not getting enough attention, the role business is playing in the war in Ukraine and how influential they can be. And it's really the first major war where that's happened.
Yeah, you're right. That is a good sleeper story. I've got a good one, though, too. And I think this is a true sleeper story, Sean, because it is a massive story that didn't get anywhere near the coverage that it normally would because of what we're talking about before, because of Ukraine, because of the floods. All of that meant that this story stayed off the front pages, but the latest report from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was released this week, and really it's pretty terrifying when you read it. Even if you just have a look at some of the main statements from it, it is frightening. It says half the planet's population is highly vulnerable to a devastating array of climate impacts, and time has nearly run out to ensure a livable future for all. I mean, that's frightening. The report includes a list of things that are worse because of rising temperatures, things like ecosystem collapse, insect-borne disease, species extinction, heat waves, megastorms, water shortages, reduced crop yields. It sounds like a disaster movie, and it really didn't get the attention it should have this week. It is a sleeper story.
Okay, 2.5 to half. You won this round, Michael. It pains me to say that. But that is a massive story that just didn't get the attention it deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. And in any other week, it would have been discussed and dissected.
Front page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And it just didn't this week.
Absolutely.
But okay, you have a chance for redemption here.
It's one to go. I'm 2 behind. It's not looking good.
No, but you can save a little bit of face here.
Maybe.
What was your favourite story?
Well, my favourite story really was the economy, both global economy and local economy. Wow, there were some good numbers. The Reserve Bank started the week coming out really upbeat about what's going on in the economy. It's a little bit worried about Ukraine, Russia, obviously, but overall, the Reserve Bank Governor, Philip Lowe, clearly thinks we are on a pretty good path. Then economic growth figures came out with 3.4% for the December quarter. That's the biggest in 46 years, off the back of a very weak September quarter, admittedly. But the annual pace of growth last year was 4.2%. That's good in anyone's language. Consumer spending is really, really strong, and that's what really contributed to growth primarily. The construction sector is solid. It went backwards actually last quarter following the ending of the home builder subsidy, but it's still okay. Business investment is pretty reasonable. Net exports were flat, though we've seen with commodity prices rising again in the last couple of months. That will probably start contributing to this quarter's growth. What was really interesting is that the government spending has actually pulled back. That's the first time that's occurred since 2017. It is exactly as should be because we've had so much spending throughout COVID. And then if you look overseas, Jerome Powell, the US Federal Reserve Chair, he came out and said, look, we're still going to lift interest rates because the US economy is still doing pretty well. All in all, it's my favourite story because, we end this week knowing that the local and global economy is doing pretty well. In fact, better than pretty well, it's doing really well, and we need that post-coronavirus.
Sean, your favourite story, you could have picked anything. You could have picked your favourite story about the ship carrying all the luxury cars that finally sank, and you picked the economy. I don't know what that says about you. But
economist by trade, Michael. Economist by trade.
How about this one? I like this. It's a little bit left field for my favourite story. Through the week, you talked, Sean, about the story of an Australian mining company, Perseus Mining. It's going to spend $200 million on an undeveloped gold project in Sudan. Running gold mines in Africa isn't exactly new to Perseus because they've already got 3 across Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. So they know what they're doing. But there is a certain amount of risk. I would say there's a fairly significant amount of sovereign risk involved in that. Last year, we saw the government in Ghana suddenly cancel a lease for a gold mine held by another Australian company, Resolute, only to then turn around and restore it a couple of weeks later. There is so much risk involved in this, but I just love stories about gold mines in Africa. Last week, my favourite story was about exploring untouched parts of Antarctica. This week, it's about mining in exotic parts of Africa. I think I just need an adventure, Sean. I think that's probably what this is all about.
Indiana Thompson. Here he is, ready to go.
That is right. That is fantastic. And just for that, Sean, you get the point for favourite story of the week.
Thank you.
That is great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
Don't forget, tomorrow we will both be back with Adam Lang from the Fear and Greed team to have a bit of a lighter look at some of the news around the place. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a good Saturday and a great weekend.